Off today, what we'd like to do is actually have a reflection on what happened during our session. So I'll invite somebody to be able to do that. But I have a friend of mine called Bob. I'd like Bob to take us through our socials. Bob.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing, Bob?
We are very good. I am very good.
Why don't you come to the front so that everybody can see you?
Following
the
this
member states
conversation.
in attendance
And yesterday,
to give it due commitment
to the left,
and consideration.
If you stand in the middle, it will be the best. Right here.
yesterday our live stream was watched by about 500 people by midday. So you can tell the amount of interest that we have in the live stream. So if you are on any of the social handles, we are running one hashtag. It is #IGAD-EAC for refugees, and you can run it across the different socials that you have for your agencies and across the partners. But also we are running a live stream this day and tomorrow and Friday. So on our IGAD Secretariat Twitter handle, YouTube page, and the Facebook handle, we are running a live stream. But for those who want to get all the information that we are doing, we put together a landing page, a website. It is igad.int/Kampala Refugee Conference. So you are able to access all the documents, the presentation, and even the pictorials. For some of us, they've been asking for some pictures for the different member states and the partners. We are able to go there and download the documents, the pictures, and they will be good for your reporting.
Amazing. Great job, great job. Let's give them a big round of applause. You know, Bob, they say that if you're doing good work, if you can't make sure you share this information, it's almost as good as no work done. But talking about work today, now I'm aware that we have got a different style of conferencing today. What are we planning on doing? Yesterday, we broke up into different groups and we went down into the different breakout sessions. Today, what's the agenda and how do we want to achieve our objectives today?
Thank you. Yesterday, we ended the day with the breakout sessions. And Mera, Shina, and also over here, we had different conversations on the different aspects on the durable solutions. We'll start with the plenary that picks up from yesterday. We'll just do it for about 30 minutes. And we'll have the session heads come and give us the reports. And we'll get the discussions from the audience. And then we will go to today's sessions. If you have the program, we have a copy of the program in each of the folders you have on your desk. But you can also get one from the website. You can download one. Today we are going to be having plenary discussions in the morning, the mid-morning, and in the evening we'll be having, in the after lunch, we will be having statements on a common pledge. We will start on the road of developing a common pledge for IGAD and EAC member states.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Nwajira from IGAD. Round of applause to him. Thank you, Bob. So I've introduced Bob, but it's with great concern that I realized that actually we haven't introduced every single one of the delegations. And we have a number of delegations that actually only arrived last night. So c'est avec beaucoup de plaisir that we'd like to say soyez les bienvenus to the delegation all the way from the DRC. So ladies and gentlemen, let's have them stand up and we welcome them. Tout le monde qui vient du DRC, soyez les bienvenus. So we have Joseph Katandu Mabiala, he's chef de division en charge de repatriement. So we will give him a chance to give us a feedback of what he thinks about our theme for this particular conference. But I'd like to give another opportunity to the head of the IGAD mission here in Uganda. Please welcome Ambassador Lucy to come and welcome all the different delegations. Ambassador, big round of applause as she makes her way here.
Thank you very much, my senior brother, Dr. Mitch, and the colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank God for bringing us again together on day 2 of our conference, and also on behalf of His Excellency, Dr. Workene Gebeyehu, the IGAD Executive Secretary, and the partners that have co-convened this high-level ministerial conference on durable solutions in our region, the government of the Republic of Uganda, our IGAD member state, as well as the East African Community Secretariat. We appreciate your commitment, we appreciate your contribution to finding durable solutions for forced displacement in our region. Excellencies and distinguished delegates of our member states of IGAD and EAC, it's my pleasure to officially welcome you once again to this important first Interregional Economic Community Conference. This is the first of its kind, and therefore is a very important and critical milestone for our region. I would like to warmly welcome the Republic of Djibouti, the Republic of Burundi, the Republic of Kenya, the Republic of Rwanda. We have not yet received delegates from the United Republic of Tanzania. However, we have delegation from the state of Eritrea, the Republic of Uganda, the Federal Republic of Somalia, the Republic of South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and Republic of Sudan. Distinguished member state delegations, you're most welcome. And it's my pleasure especially to welcome the delegation from DRC. You're most welcome, sirs. On behalf of the conference organizing team, who I would also like to take this opportunity to ask to get up for you to recognize them, I would like to say that today is again a technical segment. The technical segment is a preparation for the formulation of the ministerial declaration, which our ministers are going to join, work with us on tomorrow, and on Friday, the ministers will sign off this ministerial declaration on durable solutions for refugees in our region. Please, very quickly, can I request the conference organizing committee, the technical team, to stand up for recognition. This is our hardworking team drawn from IGAD Secretariat Djibouti, IGAD Mission to the Republic of Uganda, EAC Secretariat Arusha, UNHCR, IOM, ILO, Office of the Prime Minister from 3 distinct departments who are interlinked and deal with refugee affairs, the CRRF Secretariat, Directorate of Refugees, and we have the pleasure to host both the Commissioner, who's actually the convener of this conference, Commissioner Douglas Asimwe, please stand for recognition, and also my senior sister, Helen, who is the CRRF coordinator. So, technical team, I thank you for standing up. Take your seats. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, I have just noted that the next sessions after the presentation of yesterday's deliberations will be panel sessions. And in fact, on the first session of this day, we have our colleagues from DRC in it. So they will then give us their highlights of their reflections on the conference, which they would have done yesterday. We'll give them additional time during the plenary for them to give us their reflections to cover some of the issues that we discussed yesterday, so that we can bring them up to speed to where we are today. I thank you once more. Over to you, MC Dr. Mitch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So what we'd like to do is probably spend just 30 minutes doing reflections on on yesterday's discussion. So I'd like to hand back to the moderators of the different sessions. So from session 2, is Enid here? Enid, are you here? So I'd like to give you 10 minutes. So Patience from OPM will be able to do it. So I've been informed that it's the member states that are going to present. So Patience, this is your moment of magic. Let's give a big round of applause to Patience. Huh?
Thank you, Mitch. Good morning, distinguished delegates. My name is Patience, and I'll take you through the key highlights of yesterday's session, session 2. Session 2 was moderated by UNHCR. The panelists, we had Uganda, Kenya, Djibouti, and Rwanda. The participants, we had Sudan, Ethiopia, we had partners, and other participants. The questions for session 2 were sharing good practices, benchmarking, lesson learned, and challenges on protection of refugees and asylum seekers, and the second one was on open door policy. The key questions that were posed to the panelists were, the first one, maintaining asylum space and ensuring that the rights of refugees are under the national, regional, and international framework is a key priority for the region. How does this statement apply to your country's situation? We've summarized the key highlights of the discussion, and the responses to that question were states or the panelists responded making reference to the legal frameworks being signatories to the 1951 and the 1969 Convention that promotes rights and freedoms of refugees and asylum seekers. They added that the different states have domesticated the international and regional instruments into national laws in the Refugee Acts and the regulations that operationalizes the acts. In particular, Uganda and Rwanda reported that they are developing the refugee policy to document the good practices in their countries. In addition, the discussion, they reported that the Bill of Rights in the respective countries have captured extensively the refugee rights that translates into resilience and self-reliance for refugees. The settlement approach in the respective countries is practiced, specifically Uganda and Rwanda. Ethiopia reported that they're in the process of transitioning from encampment to have a settlement approach. Kenya equally reported that in their amended Refugee Act, they're moving towards a settlement approach. Member states and partner states reported that they are granting asylum in line with the provisions of the international, regional, and national frameworks, granting prima facie recognition and individual refugee status determination. In addition, integrating humanitarian and development assistance that targets both refugees and host communities to promote social cohesion. And lastly, the discussion, they reported all the states developing infrastructure that links refugees and host communities. That was the response from the different panelists for the first question. The panelists also reported challenges that are linked with maintaining the asylum space. And one of the challenges reported was the reduced funding that affects interventions and responses in the operations. Repercussions on the asylum space, specifically, they mentioned pendular movements and downward movers to the different neighboring countries. In particular, Djibouti reported that it's a migration corridor and has a huge number of people that come into their territory. Issues of capacity gaps within the different operations affecting refugee protection and management. And then no adequate support to refugees who are willing to return. The communication from some of the panelists, they indicated that there are states where conditions have changed to warrant fundamental returns, but they are not well supported by the international community. Lastly, lack of land in the different countries to implement the settlement approach, and hosting communities or areas having no fertile land for refugee livelihoods. Those were the challenges captured under question 1. The second question raised was, what are the measures? What measures have the respective countries put in place Thank you. What measures have the respective countries put in place to embrace the open door policy? And these are the summarized responses from the different panelists. 1, the legal framework and policy framework to support open door policy. Broad and political goodwill is extended to individuals fleeing persecution and protection. They have measures in place, including screening of asylum seekers, looking into nationality, maintaining the civilian character of asylum, and addressing security and health risks. Conducting individual refugee status determination for certain groups, those that don't qualify under prima facie recognition. Providing immediate assistance and referrals at reception centers, including host communities in the responses and intervention that promotes peaceful coexistence. Embracing a whole of government, whole of society approach by including both development partners and the private sector. And lastly, building institutional frameworks, putting in place technical capacity to support the asylum processes and protection. That was the response from the states or the panelists on the second question. The third one, panelists were to report on the challenges and opportunities in the application of the open door policy. The opportunities reported on the inclusiveness, inclusive planning and implementation by stakeholders, and then improvement of the quality of asylum, including treatment standards and complying with international protection standards. The last one was on the opportunities. Open door policy promotes freedom of movement of refugees within the EAC and within the asylum countries. The challenges of open door policy, 1, capacity, what was mentioned by the panelists, for national actors, border officials, immigration officials, and building a robust referral mechanism is a challenge without adequate funding. Second was on, there is the concern with insecurity that is also related to open door policy. This also comes with abuse from some individuals who want to hide under the blanket of seeking asylum. Third would be the challenge of dealing with former combatants or those who are actively or indirectly involved in conflict, and this applies to persons who are fleeing in mass, in group. Those were the challenges and the third question. There was a question that was B, number 3B, of how the refugee community and the host communities have benefited from the open door policy. And 2 points cut across in the discussion. One, it enhances access to territory and asylum processes and promotes peaceful coexistence within the region. The fourth question was on challenges related to onward movement of refugees within the IGAD and EAC region and how this can be addressed. On the challenges, panelists reported that one, the movers risk being denied asylum and assistance, overstretched resources or services to people who already have international protection, the risk, the protection risks that are involved in these irregular movements, and then lastly, the challenge on the current refugee database that does not allow double registration, thus frustrating processes of re-registration in the other second country where the movers are trying to seek asylum. The recommendations: 1, advocate for harmonized standards for humanitarian assistance across the region. 2, creating opportunities in countries of asylum and supporting refugee empowerment to contribute to local economies. This in turn would, create sources of livelihood and not be one of the drivers for onward movers. Sensitize refugees, yes, this came out strongly, sensitizing refugees to ensure and inform them the risks that are associated with onward movement. Fourth was to analyze the trends, the causes, and harmonization of readmission approaches within the EAC and IGAD states. The last recommendation was to strengthen asylum processes to address the frustrations that are linked with delays in access to services, which is also one of the drivers for onward movers. And lastly, each panelist had to give a key message to the IGAD-EAC member states, to IGAD and EAC, and to UNHCR. And this is a summary of the outcome of the discussions. 1, the IGAD and EAC member and partner states were called upon to address the root causes of forced displacement, noting that within the IGAD and EAC, we have the countries of origin, we also have the countries of asylum. Harmonizing refugee policies, that is standardizing the rights and freedoms that are extended to refugees within the region. And an example was given in terms of freedom of movement. Refugees in Uganda within the EAC are required to have departure visas if they are to travel to one of the neighboring countries, while if they are traveling to another country, the standards are different. So the member states were called upon to harmonize the refugee policies so that they are standardized across. 3 was to build knowledge of government and partners in asylum procedures and refugee management. Member states and partners to adopt common positions and emphasize pledge matching and tracking progress. And this came in light of the 2019 pledges that were made at the GRF. How has IGAD and EAC tracked their progress over the years? Promoting alternative solutions within the countries of asylum, focusing on socio-economic integration. Second last, there was a call to support tertiary education for refugees, noting that refugees can access the national system's primary and secondary education, but are unable to proceed to access tertiary education. Promoting meaningful involvement of local government or government structures within the different states in refugee management to support the national initiatives. Those were the messages to the IGAD-EAC member and partner states. The message to IGAD and EAC was to develop common refugee management practices and policies on refugees and asylum seekers in the region, harmonize treatment, enhance the rights of refugees across the region, movement of refugees across the region, and other cross-cutting issues on refugee status determination. Number 2, IGAD and EAC to promote livelihood activities of refugees and host communities to promote social cohesion. Come up with a common pledge for the region, given the common challenges that we face as a region. Lastly, there was an appeal to support Sudan and the South Sudan and the Sudanese nationals who are detained at the borders with limited assistance. And lastly, the key message to UNHCR was to harmonize assistance and policies across the region to curtail onward movers and sensitize refugees on the dangers of onward movement. The second, UNHCR, there is need to improve asylum procedure capacities for member states. Third, strengthen responsibility sharing in terms of resource mobilization and standardizing assistance in the region. And lastly, the request was for UNHCR to facilitate go and see, come and tell visits for areas that are considered safe for return. This was the last point, and I would like to thank all the participants for session 2, for the deliberations and the contributions to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next panel was discussing good practices, benchmarking, lessons learned, and challenges on government-led whole-of-society approaches and socio-economic inclusion. Now, to actually give us the feedback from the session, I'd like to call upon Mulwale from the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia to come and give us the presentation. I'd like to ask all of the presenters to keep within 10 minutes. There's a digital timer here which will guide you in terms of the amount of time that you've got left. But again, also we'd like you to use the lectern because of the opportunities for the camera to catch you. So kindly please use the lectern. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to Mulwale.
Okay. Good morning, all. My name is Mulalam. I'm just from Ethiopia. Our discussion point was, as MC said, we are discussing on whole of society approach and socio-economic inclusion. And we are trying to discuss on the good practice and lesson learned and challenges throughout the implementation of the whole of society approach, as well as the socio-economic inclusion activities. So the panelist was from just Kenya, and from Uganda, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. So the participants during our in our session was the member states representative, UN agencies, refugee representative, and other development partners. So the question was, what are the good practice and innovation that would share from your country's experience? So let me try to raise best lesson learned and best practices starting from the whole of government approach. So as you all know, having a parallel system is just really, it's not that much cost effective, and it requires huge effort. So the panelists, we agree, having whole of government approach is really important and really help us to achieve the GCR or other CRRF principles and concepts. So let me mention some best learn practice and lesson learned, especially from Kenya, the 2021 Refugee Act. It's really give an opportunity for the refugee to shift from the encampment to the inclusion approach, so which facilitate the whole of, which is also supported by the whole of government approach. So all services, especially health and education and other energy as well, also integrated with the existing government structure. So each line ministry in Kenya, they are responsible to plan and also implement those all activities by considering refugees. When I come to Uganda, regarding to the whole of government approach, the whole of government approach is led by, led through special mechanism like the steering group, which is, which hold around 38 members from the government, NGOs, development partners, UN agencies, private sectors, and also refugee representatives. So it gives for the refugee to have a voice in that steering committee. So the whole of government basically led by this coordination mechanisms. And also the whole of society approach in Uganda is led or rested on three basic pillars. One is open door policy and inclusion, which create opportunity for the Uganda as well as for refugees who are hosted in Uganda to be included in the national plans. So it's also one of the lesson learned and good practice from Uganda. The second pillar is just cohesion, which gives for the country as well as for the refugee to stay together and have a peaceful coexistence between host and refugees. The third pillar is resilient building and also self-reliance. So as we are moving from the humanitarian perspective to the development nexus, so having refugee with resilience and self-reliance capacity, it's really important. Also, from the discussion, we are learning a lot from Uganda panelists. When we come to Ethiopia, as you all know, refugee operation or management it will not be a sole responsibility for a given an institute or any given government body. So it should be a multi-sectoral. We should have to follow a multi-sectoral approach. So in Ethiopia, we are trying to integrate all services, especially social services, with the line ministry. So all line ministries are responsible to include refugee matters in their plan. So currently we do have a 10 years plan. So all line ministries, they are incorporate refugee related matters in their 10 years plan. And also in order to facilitate and in order to make a smooth transition from just humanitarian and to the development approach, the government of Ethiopia is trying to include refugees in the national ID program. So having that national ID, refugees have the right to access every service through all line ministries. So we are trying to implement the inclusion concept through these mechanisms. When I came to Djibouti, the 2017 new refugee law, it gives all the right for refugee, including vote. They have the right to vote in Djibouti, and also the all service, it's integrated with the line ministry, and all services are integrated with all line ministry, including health, education, and other social services. And also the ID which is provided for refugee services, like a work permit, without getting any additional work permit, they can access and they can get and work jobs in Djibouti just by having the refugee ID only. So maybe these are the key lesson learned and based experience regarding to the whole of society approach. But when I come to the socio-economic inclusion, as I said earlier, the Kenya 2021 Refugee Act really gives the right for the refugee the right to live outside the camp, so they can engage in different economic activity and they can make themselves more resilient. And also when I come to Uganda, in general, the policy as well as each development plans, they include refugees, and also they do have several response plans that offer services to host and refugees. So refugees fully included in the socio-economic activity, and they are also playing their role for the socio-economic development of the area. So regarding to the socio-economic inclusion in Ethiopia, currently we already signed a MOU with the second largest refugee hosting region to fully integrate the service, as well as to be refugee camp or settlement, to be part of the bigger master plan of the region and the refugee hosting areas. So that gives the refugee to be the economic and socio-economic part of that specific area. And also, we are not the responsible organization to provide work permit. So Ministry of Labor and Skill is the responsible government body to provide work permit, but recently we delegated from Ministry of Labor and Skill to provide work permit for the refugee. So now we are started issuing work permit for refugee. So they will access, and they will be active participant for the socio-economic activity of the country. So regarding to the socio-economic inclusion-based lesson learned from Djibouti, as I said earlier, the ID, which is provided for refugee, is just work as a work permit without any getting any additional work permit. So that's also a big lesson from Djibouti. Finally, let me summarize the whole discussion with some key messages. The first one is we have been discussed and highlighted the importance of facilitating in the free movement of refugees, especially all member states. Facilitate the free movement of refugees through integrated formal and informal cross-border management and social cohesion building for equitable access to socio-economic services. Secondly, the whole of society approaches, as I said earlier, it's a little bit and it's not that much cost effective, so it's better to, the parallel approach, it's not that much effective, so having the whole of society approach is really recommendable. And also member state to invest in enhancing access to income generating opportunities and sharing natural resource for migrant refugees and host community members like Uganda. They are providing land for refugee, so that's also maybe a good lesson. Member state to invest in sustainable process of peace and security and mitigation and managing insecurity, violence and conflict, especially for bringing more durable solution for to all forms of displacement. Member states to, we have been also discussed, member states to support the signature, ratification and implementation of IGAD protocol on free movement of persons to ensure that refugees that are also IGAD citizens can benefit from free movement and labor mobility for socio-economic activities. Refugees from member states demanding their government to extend support to countries, host refugees to be able to provide appropriate social economic activities. The other one is experience sharing, like what we did now. So experience sharing and benchmarking between member states across border and peer learning experience among IGAD and EAC member states is crucial. Support the swift conversion of camps to settlement approach and access to work permit is also important. So in order to facilitate the socio-economic inclusion of refugee. Investment of host community, meaningful participation of refugee and host communities in the inclusion of socio-economic activity. We have been also discussing the role of refugee in the economic development of in that hosting area. Like I think I can say some best experience, and maybe it can be also a big lesson learned for other members. Most of the refugees who are hosting currently, they are living in around border area. Previously, it was also less developed area, but having the refugee, that area is really changed to settlement, and some of them are become a big city. So the role of refugee is also raised by during our discussion by refugee representative. Most of the time we are raising about the burden sharing and responsibility sharing, but refugee by themselves, they come up with some skill and knowledge, so they can contribute for the local economic development activities. So the other one is integrated programs that support refugee and host community that foster socio-economic activity of the host and the refugees. Harmonization of legal and policy frameworks between countries and regions also important. The other key important point what we have been discussed yesterday and take as a good lesson is engagement of private sector. So they can play their own role for the socio-economic inclusion as well as for the whole of government society, government approach. Try to facilitate and engage private sectors in the refugee operation. So these are the main key message and the lesson what you have been discussed yesterday. So I really thank you so much for the panelists as well as the participants. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mulwale. And final category, the discussion yesterday in the third panel. I think that was Sinai's panel. They discussed good practices, benchmarking lessons learned, and challenges on return and reintegration, local integration, and resettlement. So to do this presentation, I'd like to call Dr. Kot Bol, Undersecretary, Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs from South Sudan, to do the presentation. Let's give him a round of applause as he makes his way. Doctor, you have 10 minutes, and feel free also to engage with the audience in your time. Just press the button. Let me assist.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm grateful to be able to present to you on the third group, what we have been discussing yesterday. It was all about return and repatriation and resettlement. The key question were, what is your country doing to ensure sort of sustainable return and reintegration? And what are the challenges or limitations for member states? In the panel were Burundi, Somalia, and South Sudan. And these were the highlights from the Burundi Republic. Some of the key government efforts include access to land ownership provided to refugees, reconstruction of basic refugee shelters, together with UNHCR and the government provide repatriation program. The challenges were harmonization of the repatriation process. The return of refugees to be welcomed by member states needs to be popularized. Lesson learned: utilization of a whole society approach including communities, partners, and government in addressing refugee issues. And every country has a duty to keep their citizens from becoming a threat to neighbors in the context of security and safety of the region. The Republic of Somalia, one of the highlights is that they have received 135,000 returnees in the country, of which 20,000 were children. The government effort, upon return, they are registered under the marginalized group, and this is to enable them to benefit from programs such as the food and education programs. The government of Somalia provides free education and health service to those returned group. Reintegration of IDPs into communities. There are approximately 2,977,000 IDPs in the country. This is basically caused by Al-Shabaab and tribal conflict. The government provides refugees with access to vote in the communities. Refugees are provided with business licenses to run and operate their respective businesses, which allows them to enjoy other refugee services. The support from the government further include reduced costs on licensed business for refugees. The main challenges encountered is the constant movement out of the host community into new areas by refugees is and had to be mitigated. Issues regarding shelter and subsidy for shelter construction is a major limitation. The influx of refugees is compounding on the existing number of approximately 2,967,000 IDPs in the country in return resource allocation. The main lesson learned, the right for refugees to license their businesses, the drafting and enhancement of the social cohesion policy, which is awaiting cabinet approval. The Republic of South Sudan, there has been a number of people returning to South Sudan as a result of the current conflict in the Republic of the Sudan. The government has signed in 2011 a peace agreement, and the government is working closely with IGAD and UNHCR. Over 600,000 spontaneous returns have been recorded, and since October 2022. A large number of forced returnees from the Sudan as a result of the conflict have returned. Of this number, predominantly South Sudanese, but about 8% are other national, including Sudanese. There is a weak infrastructure in the country, which is not allowing the further movement from the border point to border entry point into final destination in the country where the returnees are returning to. The challenges, lack of social infrastructure at the border areas and financial services, land for settlement. Lesson learned, experiences of South Sudan would like to share with other member states. Coordination among the stakeholders is a challenge. Efficient use and distribution of resources is a second challenge. The general takeaway from the discussion is on the return and repatriation as such. First of all, on the challenges, the two regional economic communities have witnessed a large number of returnees returning home, which necessitate the coordinated effort from all the parties to help the people assimilate back into their home nations. All the panelists concur that refugees are citizens and citizens of their home countries and should have the same right as the resident. With assistance from the international community and the development partners, governments that receive returns have worked to welcome them in accordance with their capabilities. The countries of origin have taken the following step and made the following effort to create a welcoming atmosphere for return. A bullet, significant sensitization of those willing to return, such as through the tripartite agreement between governments. For example, government of Tanzania, Burundi, and UNHCR. Policies to promote reintegration and return were devised. Government have held National Citizens Engagement Forum for use and partnership with universities on skill development for refugees. Issued business licenses for refugees to engage in business activities in hosting countries. Countries of origin have profiled returnees. To encourage sustainable and reintegration, certain nations have policies on social cohesion, reintegration, procedures, and land redistribution. IDPs have the right to vote in local elections and must and be elected to local council in some countries such as Somalia. Returnees are recognized as marginalized group for the purpose of receiving humanitarian help. However, the following obstacle must be overcome by countries of origin in order to achieve sustainable repatriation and reintegration. Meeting with the enormous requirements of returnees is a regional issue that needs cooperation from international partners. The two regional economic communities have high unemployment rate, which are made worse by a large number of ongoing refugee cases. Lack of access to essential service is another. Declining resettlement in the third world nation. A cycle could travel back or via secondary location. Lack of housing or housing-related difficulties, weak infrastructure, and insecurity. The member states and partner countries praise the ongoing and unceasing support of the international community and development partners and applaud to the international community to provide more support in light of the immense challenge faced by the two regional economic communities in the context of displacement and to provide durable solution for refugees. Lesson learned in general, equal service access and specific codes for returnees may hasten reintegration in return zones. Nations of origin must take all necessary steps to keep returnees from returning to host nation when they find the return environment to be welcoming. Identify crises occur when there are protracted refugees, and they frequently pose a challenge to the host nation. Refugees quickly reintegrate into local society when offered the opportunity to return to run enterprises. I beg your pardon. The recommendation? Hello? Can you hear me like that? Okay. On the recommendation, it is advised for countries of origin to create a favorable environment for return and reintegration by specifying their countries and establishing go and see visit to areas of return. Profiling refugees' skills and use them when they return to their areas, to their countries of origin is equally important. Maintain the asylum space for people seeking international protection in the EAC and IGAD by ensuring admission to the territory, protection against reformer, consistent access to national asylum procedures, and access to effective protection for refugees until a durable solution is found either in countries of origin or in the host countries. when it comes to local integration and resettlement, some countries like Djibouti have initiated using national IDs to refugees to help them pursue studies outside of Djibouti. Property restitution is a vital element of local integration. It was noted the importance of host countries to facilitate the resettlement of refugees to third countries by easing documentation as well as renewing the travel documents. To avoid brain drain in the two regional economic community and Africa as a continent, it was noted by the panelists that EAC and IGAD has to look into the possibility of resettling refugees within the region or Africa and engage the private sector on reintegration approaches. Finally, I have two honorable recommendations. The recommendations are, though local integration is a sovereign choice, the EAC and IGAD is expected to assist voluntary integration of refugees, expand and protect sustainable complementary pathway focusing on labor mobility, skills, and harmonization of accreditation in the regional economic communities. The discussion mentioned the need to include refugees in national development plans to facilitate area planning approach that build the resilience of the host communities and prepare refugees for solution. IGAD to make use of EAC protocol on refugee management to draw lessons. And finally, international community to support refugee hosting communities to ease the pressure by mobilizing more resources and increase resettlement opportunity for refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Yep.
So ladies and gentlemen, before we move into our next segment, I'd like to ask us all to take a tea break, but I'd like us to take a working tea break so that in the next 5 to 7 minutes, everybody has picked their cup of tea from outside and made their way back into the room so that we can move and try to accelerate the morning session. So kindly go pick up your tea, get back into the room, and then we'll dive back into the next segment. Thank you. Et mesdames et messieurs, on va prendre un petit repos, juste pour 5 minutes. On voudrait que vous preniez un peu du thé et vous retournez ici pour qu'on puisse commencer la prochaine partie du programme. Merci. panel, and we will have representatives from IOM, the Republic of Uganda, the Republic of Somalia, Republic of South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Ethiopia. Kindly prepare yourselves. This particular session is going to be moderated by IGAD. Our moderator for today is Mr. Charles Obila, the head of IGAD Support Platform. We will be starting in the next few seconds. Kindly take your seats. We will give each of the presenters 5 minutes. We will give a special opportunity to the team from the Democratic Republic of Congo to speak for 10 minutes. Because yesterday they were not part of the discussion, we'd like to hear their perspective on this particular topic, plus also to hear their perspectives on the theme for this year's high-level ministerial conference on durable solutions for refugees. So kindly take your seats, and we'll be commencing imminently. All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Session 5, Regional and National Mechanism for Prevention, Mitigation, and Response to Drivers of Forced Displacement. This will be a panel discussion. I'd like us to put our hands together to our first panelist from IOM. Round of applause as they make their way to the podium. We'd like to have a representative from the Republic of Uganda. Please make your way to the podium. We'd like to have a representative from the Federal Republic of Somalia. We'd like to have a representative from the Republic of South Sudan, representative from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a representative from the Republic of Ethiopia. And please welcome with me our moderator for this session, the head of the IGAD Support Platform, Mr. Charles Obila. Charles, the microphone is yours. Round of applause as he makes his way.
Is slightly different, which subtracts Uganda from the list, I have the Democratic Republic of Congo. Please do come forward as you are panelists. And for the organizers of the meeting, we are going to need an extra, we do have 6, that's okay. And the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia as well, please do come forward. And Republic of South Sudan, Republic of Sudan, the Federal Republic of Somalia, and IGAD. And with me here, I'll be having René, who is with the IOM. And for the panelists who are quickly coming up front in order to save time, when they take the floor, they'll have to quickly introduce themselves so that we know exactly who they are and what the titles are in their respective government ministries. And IGAD as well will have to do likewise. So I think we are filling up the panel. We're still short of 2 other panelists. But without much ado, we're going to have to start in order not to be running out of time, which happens to be our challenge since yesterday. So is the Democratic Republic of Congo here? Ah, la République démocratique du Congo est présente avec nous. Nous allons devoir commencer. We're going to have to start our session for this morning just before lunch time. So for the panelists, this is the format. We are going to ask you a question. Please be brief, succinct, and straight to the point, which would help us then cover a number of issues. One question, and then kindly try to respond to that question in a row. We'll try and moderate that. And I will be focusing on violent conflict questions, not because I am a violent person, simply because these are the drivers of forced displacement. And our peaceful co-moderator, René, will be looking at climate change related questions. So we're going to have to start, and like I said, please introduce yourselves and be brief, especially with regard to question number 1, which elicits very, very simple, even though the subject matter itself is quite complicated, but it does demand maybe an enumeration of the structural causes of conflict in your respective countries. So the first question is, and we will start with the Democratic Republic of Congo. On va commencer avec la RDC pour ce qui concerne la première question, and which is, what are the key root causes of conflict and displacement in your country? Au cas où vous auriez loupé la première question parce que vous étiez en train de mettre donc, les écouteurs, vous n'avez pas de stylo, bon voilà. Vous avez besoin d'autre chose, non? C'est bon? La première question, donc, quelles sont les causes structurelles de conflits et de déplacements dans votre pays? What are the key structural root causes of conflict and displacement in your country? So, we will, quelles sont les causes structurelles de conflits et de déplacements forcés dans votre pays? Alors, si vous pouvez nous aider à tout simplement énumérer ces causes en question, ça nous aiderait d'aller encore beaucoup plus vite dans notre discussion. Êtes-vous prêts? Allez-y. Je suppose que ça marche. Appuyez seulement.
Merci pour la parole. La question qui m'a été posée est celle-ci. Quelles sont les causes structurelles des conflits de déplacement forcés dans notre pays? Je serai très sincère par rapport à cette question. L'impression que j'ai, comme si certains voisins ou certains États ne comprennent pas du tout les causes majeures qui font que notre pays soit, depuis 1996, en conflit perpétuel, surtout dans sa partie de l'Est. En interne, nous ne pensons pas, ça c'est mon point de vue, nous ne pensons pas qu'il y a des causes réelles qui font que nous sommes toujours en conflit. Et pour moi, j'estime qu'il y a des forces, ça vous devez les reconnaître, que nous sommes un grand pays, potentiellement, je dis bien riche, et toutes ces potentialités font que certaines puissances, je le dirais, ne veulent jamais voir ces pays rester debout. C'est ça. Donc moi, la grande cause, moi je pense, ça doit être les forces externes. Les forces externes qui ne travaillent que pour la destruction de la RDC. Parce que si vous observez ce qui se fait dans la partie est de mon pays, mais vous serez étonnés. Il y a des violences énormes. Des violences énormes. Il y a des tueries chaque jour, ça vous apprenez. Il y a des viols chaque jour. Et ces faits se passent plus dans des zones minières. Surtout dans des zones minières. C'est dans des zones minières. Donc, moi, j'estime que ce sont des forces extérieures qui tiennent à nous laisser dans cette situation de conflit. Mais néanmoins, depuis un certain temps, je pense que le gouvernement de la République démocratique du Congo a été en relation avec certains États voisins pour essayer un peu d'apaiser la situation. Fort malheureusement, les choses continuent à être ce qu'elles sont. Et d'ailleurs, c'est la raison pour laquelle nous sommes retrouvés ici pour parler de solutions durables au problème des réfugiés. Donc tous ces conflits ont engendré de nombreux déplacements en interne, même à l'externe.
Merci beaucoup. Étant donné qu'on a accordé à la RDC un peu plus de temps pour pouvoir maintenant nous donner des amples informations sur des questions concernant les réfugiés, ça a été expliqué ce matin. Vous avez encore 7 minutes pour vous expliquer en plus donc de cette question que vous venez d'aborder.
Merci beaucoup. Je tiens à vous remercier parce que vous avez accordé quand même la parole à la RDC. Parce qu'hier, on n'a pas été à la cérémonie d'ouverture. Mon pays, la RDC, c'est un pays qui garde sa vocation d'accueillir les hôtes. Déjà en 1960, nous avons accueilli des centaines de milliers de réfugiés angolais fuyant les conflits armés dans leur pays. Nous avons reçu dans la capitale à Kinshasa et dans la province du Congo central plus de centaines de milliers de réfugiés angolais. Et d'ailleurs, c'est cet afflux de réfugiés angolais qui a conduit notre gouvernement à signer l'accord de siège avec les HR le 4 avril 1975. Un travail a été fait pour faciliter le rapatriement de tous ces réfugiés angolais. Et depuis 1996, à ce jour, notre pays connaît d'énormes difficultés sur le plan sécuritaire. Et c'est ça qui a créé les déplacements forcés de plus d'1 million. Si je les chiffre au 30 avril, 1 151 414 000 réfugiés congolais installés dans le pays voisin, et principalement en Ouganda, que je remercie d'ailleurs pour l'accueil accordé à nos compatriotes. L'Ouganda a un nombre important de réfugiés congolais sur son territoire. Merci pour cet accueil. Et le conflit aussi dans le pays voisin, je vais les citer, ont généré encore des réfugiés sur les sols congolais. Principalement, vous avez des Rwandais, plus de 200 000. Si j'ai une bonne mémoire, c'est 208 052 personnes. Et vous avez nos frères centrafricains, 210 238 personnes, et nos frères du Soudan du Sud, 56 877, et nos frères burundais, 45 234 personnes. Un pays en conflit qui accueille encore des réfugiés en provenance de pays voisins. Et dans ce contexte de solutions durables, notre gouvernement, depuis 2006-2010, avec le concours, avec la collaboration du HR, a signé des accords tripartites relatifs au rapatriement volontaire des réfugiés centrafricains avec la Centrafrique, avec le Congo-Brazzaville, avec l'Angola, avec la Zambie, avec le Burundi, avec la Tanzanie, mais avec le Rwanda. C'est en 2010. Et pour booster le rapatriement des réfugiés, le gouvernement congolais aujourd'hui cherche à redynamiser tous ces accords, tous ces cadres juridiques pour relancer les rapatriements des réfugiés congolais et ceux de pays voisins. Donc là, nous avons, peut-être bientôt, on sera en tripartite avec la Tanzanie, avec le Burundi. Et récemment aussi, nous avons eu des échanges avec l'Afrique du Sud. Vous apprendrez que depuis 2022, nous sommes en pleine opération de rapatriement facilité des réfugiés congolais installés en Afrique du Sud. Ils viennent déjà. Et puis, nous avons, il y a 2 mois, nous sommes retrouvés en Namibie aussi pour négocier déjà avec la Namibie pour faciliter les rapatriements des réfugiés congolais installés en Namibie. Donc, nous avons déjà les accords tripartites. Et nous facilitons les rapatriements de nos compatriotes depuis des années à travers ces mécanismes tripartites. Aussi, nous assurons aussi les rapatriements de réfugiés de pays voisins qui veulent rentrer dans leur pays. Avec le Rwanda, c'est chaque jour qu'on a les rapatriements au Rwanda. Et puis, en dehors de ces rapatriements, nous avons aussi des programmes de réintégration. Pour les Congolais qui rentrent surtout dans des zones rurales, là, le gouvernement travaille pour l'accès des réfugiés aux terres, ça c'est acquis. Même ceux-là qui ont perdu leur patrimoine ou leurs biens, les services sont là pour les accompagner à récupérer leurs biens. Ça, c'est un travail qui se fait déjà. Bon. Par rapport à l'intégration locale, j'ai très bien suivi certains intervenants et j'ai beaucoup aimé l'expérience ou la bonne pratique de certains pays, en l'occurrence l'Ouganda, le Djibouti. Mais j'aimerais vous dire que c'est depuis 2002 que le gouvernement congolais a mis en place une loi, la loi 021/2002 relative au statut des réfugiés en RDC. Et cette loi accorde dans ses dispositions tous les droits possibles aux réfugiés. Donc, un réfugié installé en RDC a le même droit avec moi, hormis les droits politiques. Donc, nous avons les mêmes droits. Ils ont l'accès aux terres, la documentation, ça ils ont, la documentation, l'accès à l'enseignement, l'accès à l'éducation et la circulation, la libre circulation. Vous allez voir chez moi un réfugié installé à Kinshasa, qui va à Lubumbashi, qui va à Goma, qui va dans le Bas-Congo, dans le Congo central. Un réfugié installé à l'Équateur, dans le sud d'Ubangi, venir à Kinshasa, dans le cadre du business, ils le font, ils circulent librement. Mais qu'est-ce que le gouvernement fait? Le gouvernement fait des efforts à travers des campagnes de sensibilisation des services, des autorités, pour renforcer cette jouissance des droits reconnus aux réfugiés par la loi 021. Donc ça, vraiment, chez nous, les réfugiés sont libres de circuler. Mais ça, je sais, j'ai eu à travailler avec certains pays voisins, dans le cadre des opérations de rapatriement volontaire. Nous sommes rendus compte qu'ailleurs, dans certains coins, un réfugié ne peut pas sortir de son camp. Récemment, j'ai été en Afrique australe. Récemment, j'ai été en Afrique australe. Ils suivent. Récemment, j'ai été en Afrique australe, mais quitter les camps d'Ossiré pour les réfugiés congolais, mais c'est pénible. Mais chez moi, les gens circulent librement.
Je crois qu'il y a un problème de micro.
C'est bon?
C'est bon? Oui, oui, c'est.
J'ai été quelque part en Afrique australe. Je me suis rendu compte que dans ces pays-là, les réfugiés ne sortent même pas de leur camp. Il y a des barrières pour sortir du camp. Mais chez moi, en RDC, nous avons des expériences. Les réfugiés circulent librement. Ils ont la documentation nécessaire et nous assurons continuellement la protection de ces personnes. Voilà. Donc en dehors de ça, dans le cadre de la réintégration aussi, s'il vous plaît, nous avons eu à réintégrer, bien sûr en partenariat avec certains partenaires, nous avons eu à réintégrer en 2012 plus de 18 500 réfugiés angolais qui sont aujourd'hui installés chez nous, documentés, ils vivent chez nous, ils sont restés chez nous après le rapatriement. Merci.
Thank you very much. That gives us an overview of how the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, handles refugees in the country. And thank you for responding to the first question on the key root causes of conflict and displacement in your country. Now, we will move on to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. And please, in very few words, tell us what those structural causes of conflict and displacement are in your country. And the timing is there, but it is wrong. They are being generous. They're giving you 10 minutes. In fact, you've got 5 minutes. It's only the DRC that was allocated 10 minutes because of the stated reasons. Please, you've got the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Seleshi Demiso. I'm from the Refugees and Return Service of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Currently, I am the co-chair of GRF 2023 coordination team. So for the question posed regarding the root causes of displacement, we are not actually unique in having the root causes of displacement in the context of our countries. Violence that arises due to conflict in assuming resources like land and whatsoever is one of the causes for displacement in our region. And the second being, may I proceed? Sure. Proceed? Sure. So poverty is one of the root causes that is driving people to be displaced in our context. And the security and the political situation, be it in my country or in the IGAD region or in the East African community, is one commonality we in the region share with regards to displacement of people in every direction. And persecution is also one of the causes that drives people to be displaced. And then the very emerging trend that's driving people to get displaced is the very rampant effects of climate change, which could be demonstrated in drought and in seasonal rain, which results in flooding. So these days we're seeing people getting displaced from one place to another due to the very effects of this increasing effects of climate change due to drought and flooding and whatsoever. So these are the very pressing issues that are the root driving causes for people in my country to be displaced. If I'm brief, that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Highly appreciated. You've Very brief and concise, to the point. Highly appreciated. Now we're going to have the Federal Republic of something, South Sudan.
Thank you very much. I think we are not federal yet, but we are a republic. Thank you very much for the questions. I'm going to be direct and straight to the point. The root causes or the main drivers of displacement in my country could be categorized in fourfold. The first one is the political violence. And this we have witnessed in 2013 when the country went through the civil war among themselves. That has led to a lot of displacement within and outside the country. It continued until we signed the agreement in 2018. Another driver of displacement is a tribal or communal violence between various ethnic groups in the country. That again is causing a lot of displacement within the country, and it has been one of the main drivers of displacement. But more recently, we have also seen external factors in the Republic of Sudan, where a lot of our people who came back together with refugees from the Sudan and other nationals that pour into our country. Some of our people who have been in the north or in the Republic of Sudan have never seen the country. So when they come into the country, they don't know where to go, where to fit. The fourth element is the climatic shocks. The country, for the last 4 years, we have been witnessing consecutively for the last 4 years a serious flood in the country. That flood has led to a lot of displacement in the country and loss of livelihood for many of our citizens. Again, we have also a phenomenon of drought, which is dry spell in some southern part of the country, which extend into Kenya and Somalia and the rest. That was part of that region. We have witnessed a serious threat in a place called Kapoita. It's witnessed a lot of threats. So these have been the main drivers of displacement in my country. As a country, we have tried to deal with it, but it is of enormous proportion. We have tried to involve other international organizations, including UN bodies, to help us resolve this situation. But until now, we still have something like close to 1.9 million displaced people in the country. Of course, we are resolved to solve this situation, but it is of gigantic proportion, which we need other people to come in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it. And yes, thank you for correcting me. It's not as yet a federal republic. It's just the Republic of South Sudan. And then we'll have now somebody from the Republic of Sudan. Please be as brief and to the point as the preceding panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mujahid Abdurrahman Usman. I'm Deputy Head of Sudan Mission to Uganda. I'm participating in this ministerial conference on behalf of our Sudanese technical expert who are not able to come to participate in this conference because of the ongoing conflict. So I hope to be more useful for the deliberation. When it comes to speak about the key roots cases displacement in my country, what comes to my mind is the climate change. As we all know that the climate change is real. If we look to the Darfur conflict, which was in 2003. The main cause of that conflict is that some tribes is trying to move from place to another place, seeking for agriculture, water, means of life. And this is why when they reach to another point, then they will having a problem with the community which is in that place. And this is why that was main cause of the conflict in Darfur. As we are speaking right now, and we all know the ongoing war in Sudan, it caused because of the political parties is failed to reach to the ground or common ground to how to drive the country itself. And this is why the RSF are getting support from some political parties to seize the power, and fortunately they are getting support from some regional and international players. And as we are speaking right now, they are occupying some residential area, hospitals, ministries, many other vital facilities. And this is why the citizen of Khartoum, capital city, is displaced, and they are trying to move to the neighboring countries, especially to Egypt, as we have bilateral agreement that our people and the Egyptian people can freely move between the two countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Highly appreciated. And we'll now have the last panelist from the Federal Republic of Somalia to respond to the same question on the root causes of conflict and forced displacement in your country. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Ismail Mohammed Ahmed from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Somalia. My response to that question is that in Somalia, with a country that's tilting with 2,900,000 internally displaced people, in fact, the significance of the IDBs or the number of IDBs in our country is too much to cope by the government there. And the root causes of the forced displacement is mainly a conflict and climate change driven forced displacement, drought. You know, the pastoralists, our country, the people are mainly pastoralists. Almost the 60% of the population in the rural areas are pastoralists. And with the pastoralists, when it's a drought, they mostly lose their livestock due to the drought. And the only option they are left with is to get displaced and go to the towns to seek for food and other basic needs. The other problem is also floods, like in southern Somalia, where the rivers are, like Shabelle River, in Beledweyne, where there has been a constant and frequent floods. When it comes to conflict, now tribal-based conflicts have been on decline in our country. For the last 5 years, there were very small numbers of tribal-based conflicts. But the only conflict now that's that mainly remained is the fight against the Al-Shabaab. Now our government declared an all-out war against the Al-Shabaab since the beginning of this year. And the government troops almost has taken over many villages and districts in southern and central Somalia. And with that fight also, we are going to pay the price. And of course, IDBs, the internally displaced people, will be on the rise due to that war against the Al-Shabaab. But in our response, Somalia also tried its best to provide a response mechanisms to curb the internal or the forced displacement. our government established what they inspiring a viable livelihood options for the pastoralists who have been only depending on livestock. That's why most of the projects carried out by the humanitarian organizations, we always insisted that the support is sorted into small farming support programs. We also have another mechanism for disaster. We have also Somalia National Disaster Resiliency Strategy Framework, and also a comprehensive approach to security or national security framework that's aimed at addressing the root causes of conflict and the ways those conflicts can be reduced or be eased. And we also have the National Development Plan, where we contemplate or we emphasize how we are going to curb this increasing forced displacement in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Highly appreciate it, and I hope that the audience is hanging in there and are following, and how brief and to the point our panelists were with regard to the structural causes of conflict and displacement. So the second question, and I am also going to allow myself to share with you the third question, so that in the meantime, you are thinking of responses to the questions. The second one is, how can sustainable peace and security be attained in the region, and what has your country done? That is your country's contribution in the region with regard to sustaining peace. Pour ce qui concerne donc le maintien de la paix dans la région et la contribution de votre pays à cet égard. Alors, vous êtes prêts ou vous voulez qu'on commence avec quelqu'un d'autre? D'accord, okay. And the other question now is going to be on climate-induced displacement, which is, what should regional bodies like EAC and IGAD and the international community do to support your country's effort to address conflict and forced displacement? So this time is your country's viewpoint with regard to the efforts that the regional bodies can do in order to assist in the area of conflict and forced displacement. So what we are going to do now is we are going to go back to the Federal Republic of Somalia and then come this way, help us to respond to the second question on sustaining peace in the region and the contribution of Somalia, the contribution of Ethiopia, of South Sudan, of Somalia, and the DRC. You've got the mic. Thank you.
I will try to be brief. You're welcome. When it comes to addressing the conflict and providing a sustainable way of dealing with the conflicts and the insecurity and instability, and having a way of positively responding to the current trends of conflict in the country. In fact, in Somalia, we have a reconciliation department under the Ministry of Interior, and that department is responsible for mediating all conflicted parties in the country. There have been inactive tribal conflicts in our country, and sometimes those inactive conflicts, they become active. So to deal with that, we have established a directorate under the Ministry of Interior that brings together all the traditional elders. And when you have all the traditional elders under the reconciliation department, it is easier at least to have all the traditional elders gathered and facilitate for them to discuss and so that wherever there's a conflict among the tribes in the country. The other conflicts that are driven by disputes, land disputes, resource disputes, those we have a mechanism called conflict early warning mechanism is set up in our country. Those monitor any conflicted trends in the country or any conflict indicators in the country, so that we are able to know before the conflicts are even are taking place. And we formulate our strategies prior to the violence, prior to taking place of the violence.
Yeah, in addition to the measures that the country has adopted internally in order to address all those causes of conflicts and conflicts themselves, what does your country do to assist the region in sustaining peace and security?
I remember there was a IGAD MSU mediation and support unit workshop. Some time back, they wrote a book about the lessons learned from the conflicts in our country and how those conflicts were dealt with. With us, although we cannot provide substantial support into the sustenance of peace in the region, but at least we can share our experience with the region, because there are many lessons learned from conflict mediations that has taken place, or the efforts of peace processes in our country. We can share with our East African counterparts and IGAD member states how or what we have learned from those conflicts and how those conflicts were resolved.
Thank you so much. Sudan?
Thank you. In Sudan, after the revolution succeeded in taking the ex-regime headed by al-Bashir, the central government held a national dialogue, inviting all the stakeholders from different regions of Sudan. And we talked about the whole things about the country, the progress of it, and having a peace, internal peace in Sudan. And this is why one of the outcomes of that dialogue is to call upon all armed group who are existing in some region to have a peace with the central government. And thanks to the government of Republic of South Sudan for holding all that peace process, and we succeeded to call upon 90% of the armed group, and right now they are a part of the existing government. When it comes to the regional body, as we all know that Sudan is the chair of IGAD, and he's doing his best to build the peace in the region. And this is why recently we call upon the head of state to meet in Djibouti 2 days ago to address the challenges of the peace and security in the region. And regarding to Sudan, the outcomes is to call upon the two generals to sit together to having a peace agreement and to think about the humanitarian corridor to let the humanitarian aid to enter inside Sudan as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Could we now have the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia?
Thank you. So, to bring sustainable peace and stability in my country, for example, the very measures that should be taken is to dry up those root causes and drivers which force people to displace. So my government has established a National Reconciliation Commission, which is entitled to bring conflicting parties to the negotiating table so that they could settle their differences through dialogue and by one or another means, factors that could force people to displacement could be averted. So the initiative is of that kind to bring peace and stability, of course, durable peace and stability within, by bringing those parties with different ideologies to deal with the differences through dialogue and come to a term that could help ensure peace and stability. With regards to the role Ethiopia has been playing to ensure peace and stability within the region is so many. So Ethiopia has been there resorting an African solution for African problems. Recently, we can cite 2 or 3 years before, we recall that there were differences between the political and military actors in the Sudan, in neighboring Sudan. So it was our prime minister who went there all the way from Addis to Khartoum and settled the differences at the end of the day. This is one living proof that demonstrates how committed Ethiopia is to resort to an African solution for an African problem. As we speak, IGAD convened its high-level meeting in Djibouti on Monday. So IGAD has selected 4 members to mediate the Sudan difference, which Ethiopia is part and parcel of that committee. So we are having our role still to bring peace and stability in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Republic of South Sudan.
Thank you very much for asking me to comment on how to maintain peace in my country and other places. Of course, the responsibility of maintaining peace in a country lies, first of all, with the ruling elite in the country, that is the politician and the citizen themselves. Because without peace and security, the country can never be stable. It is a well-known fact that for the last 6 or 7 years, my country has been going through a difficult time since 2013. However, the government has pursued the maintenance of peace in the country, which culminated in the agreement which was signed in 2018 under the auspices of IGAD, of which I'm also happy to mention that Sudan was a leading member in that country. The 2018, what they call revitalized agreement on the resolution of conflict in the Republic of South Sudan is very well maintained so far, and the country is witnessing a peace period. And we are grateful for that. The only one we can say that I hope we will maintain that for a long time. Yeah. As far as regional groups like the EAC and IGAD, I can only commend the role of IGAD in this forum, that the peace that we are witnessing in the country was an effort of IGAD. So we can only thank them for that. And as far as the causes of displacement are concerned, how best they can support us, of course, besides, we have our own plans how to resolve the issue of displacement. But our plans don't go far as far as resources are concerned. So we'll be very helpful and grateful if IGAD and EAC could see that they mobilize resources to enable us to resettle and integrate our communities in various areas of origin. And this is what I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. You have anticipated on the third question, which is related to the role of the regional bodies with regard to sustaining peace and addressing some of the causes of conflict and displacement. So when my colleague comes to co-moderate, kindly not respond to that question, but rather respond to this part of the question, which is going to be, what is the role of your country in the region with regard to sustaining peace? So if you could retain and remember that when you have a chance, when we go now for the third round, please respond to that, but not to the question that the other panelists would be responding to, which is the role of the regional bodies. Thank you.
Okay.
S'il vous plaît, vous avez la parole.
Merci pour votre question relative à la contribution de mon pays, de mon gouvernement par rapport à la paix dans la région. Je l'ai souligné tout à l'heure dans mes premiers propos que depuis des années, notre pays traverse des moments très difficiles avec la résurgence de mouvements armés, de groupes armés, surtout dans sa partie Est. Et qu'est-ce que mon gouvernement fait? Je pense, vous suivez quand même de nouvelles depuis des années que notre chef de l'État se déplace essaie de passer pratiquement dans tout le pays voisin pour essayer un peu de restaurer ce climat de confiance entre parties afin que la paix règne dans notre pays. Et vous avez suivi récemment que nous avons engagé des pourparlers en Nairobi et à Luanda avec les groupes armés pour qu'on se parle, qu'on voit ce qu'il y a au fond et puis arrêter ces conflits qui poussent des millions de Congolais à se déplacer de leur milieu d'origine. Je pense que mon gouvernement fait déjà un effort dans le cadre de ces processus pour essayer un peu de restaurer la paix. Et aussi l'adhésion dans certaines organisations sous-régionales. C'est aussi une preuve manifestée par mon gouvernement de collaborer avec tous nos voisins, par exemple, pour créer ce climat de paix. Merci.
Thank you very much. So now what we'll do is we will have this transition from this co-moderator that you're having now to René, who is going to be co-moderating from the third question that was asked, and we are going to have to move and respect the panelist order, which means that we're going to once again have to start with the Democratic Republic of Congo. René?
Hi, good afternoon once again, everyone. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Ronnie Yamading, working under the Department of Migration, Environment and Climate Change, the climate change focal point for IOM Uganda. I'll be taking you through the session on climate change and disasters. And just to elaborate more, I think I'll beg the indulgence of the audience today to allow me to frame today's discussion on climate change and disasters. Hello? I believe the idea of today's discussions and subsequently Friday's pledge that member states are going to be making has to come from clear definitions and understanding of the climate change perspective. We talk about natural hazards, we talk about climatic conditions, onset processes, slow onset processes. We have to be very clear and deliberate with how we discuss some of these topics, because when the pledges are put together, it has to be clearly defined for member states to accurately commit to what they're going to be doing moving forward with regards to the EAC and IGAD member states. Addressing question 3, I'd like to ask our panel members to note this question down before you can actually give us your concrete answers from your respective member states. What should regional bodies like the South African Community and IGAD and the international community do to support your country's efforts to address conflict and forced displacement? Before you answer this question, I would like you to also think about the instruments in the region. Let's think about the processes such as the UNFCCC. Let's think about the IGAD free movement protocols. Let's think about mobility in terms of climate-affected areas and cross-border movements and displacement in your respective countries. So I'd like to start with the DRC. Please.
S'il vous plaît, la traduction est vraiment déplorable. Vous me mettez dans des conditions à ne pas comprendre les questions qui sont posées. La traduction est difficile. Si on peut améliorer la qualité de la traduction.
Thank you. For the translators, I don't think we are able to get that piece from our colleague from the DRC. So what I'll do is, I think I'll revise the format. I think let's give audience to our last member in the panel, all the way from the end. I believe it's Sudan, if I'm not mistaken. Somalia. Thank you for the correction. I think you can address the question first as you walk through the translators for our colleagues from the DRC to respond. You can go ahead first, sir. Thank you.
Your question, as I understand, is what are the ways other bodies like IGAD and UN agencies can support our countries in terms of conflict, in terms of curbing conflict and climate change, right?
In terms of conflict and forced displacement. But under forced displacement, think about climate change and its effects in looking at environmental degradation and hazards that occur from climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Merci.
I captured it clearly now. I think the ways our governments can be supported, or the effective ways our governments can be supported, is through capacity building, capacitating those already available mechanisms, because we already have a mechanism established under our government. Like in Somalia, we have a mechanism already, National Refugee Commission, we have National Disaster Management, there are already mechanisms. First, we need to capacitate those already existing mechanisms. The other thing is that we need to address the root causes of conflict by supporting national reconciliation efforts. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you very much, but carry on.
Yeah. We need to have a capacity building support programs for our already existing mechanisms. Secondly, when it comes to addressing the root causes of conflict, we need to have support for reconciliation efforts existing, because there are already self-supported reconciliation efforts, most probably in our countries. So such efforts should be financially subsidized so that they can effectively do their work. You know, when it comes to other programs, like in my country, in Somalia, when it comes to livelihood, when it comes to shelter, when it comes food security, when it comes to nutrition and health, all the other humanitarian programs do have clusters where, you know, the similar other programs are discussed. And almost those clusters, they hold almost monthly meetings. But when it comes to peace, I've never seen a peace forum. You see, we already have a reconciliation, national reconciliation forum, but the support received for peace processes is very limited when you compare to other supports we receive. When it comes to this other question, forced displacement here and the effect is the climate change had. By the way, climate change is one of the major drivers of forced displacement. Because, you know, people mostly who are displaced from the rural areas, they got displaced because most of their livestock they depended on have been wiped out by the drought. There, we need the support of the creation of viable alternative livelihood options, whereby people depending on livestock, we need to support the creation, asset creation programs, like supporting small-scale farming, small-scale entrepreneurship, we need to have a different livelihood settings. Because, you know, when somebody loses his or her livestock, if they don't have any other alternative livelihood option, they will be left with no choice except being displaced and going to towns, joining a certain IDB site. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Somalia. Great response. Thank you for the insight.
You're welcome.
If you allow me, if the DRC is ready, I think you'll reclaim your spot.
Merci pour la parole. Je voulais réagir par rapport à la question sur les soutiens des entités de la communauté internationale dans les efforts pour trouver des réponses adéquates aux problèmes liés à la je voulais répondre par rapport à la préoccupation concernant les soutiens des entités de la communauté internationale dans les efforts pour trouver des réponses adéquates à la paix. Je pense que c'est ça, si j'ai bien compris. Là, je voulais dire ceci, qu'au niveau de la République démocratique du Congo, pour faire face à certaines crises désastreuses, comme celle que nous venons de connaître récemment à Calais, je pense que si vous avez suivi même la presse internationale, il y a eu des inondations horribles dans les territoires Calais, dans la province du Sud Kivu, ayant même entraîné plus de 500 morts. Visiblement, ont entraîné plus de 500 morts. Plus de 500 morts. Mais, avant cette crise de Calais, notre gouvernement avait créé spécifiquement le ministère des Actions humanitaires. Ce ministère a été créé aussi pour soutenir les personnes en détresse et travaille avec les partenaires internationaux pour trouver des solutions aux problèmes de calamités qui peuvent survenir dans notre pays. Aussi, la question de Calais nous a aussi donné une matière à réflexion. Et d'ailleurs, le gouvernement a même pris une disposition légale par rapport au déplacement, par exemple, à la relocalisation de la population de ces villages de Calais qui a été plongé dans les inondations. Donc, ce ministère travaille déjà avec la communauté internationale, avec les partenaires internationaux pour nous soutenir dans les différentes crises climatiques qui se posent dans notre pays.
Thank you very much, DRC. I'll give the floor to South Sudan, I believe, can go next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. I think before I proceed to answer your questions, I was asked earlier to comment or to clarify what my government is doing to maintain peace in the country. I mentioned earlier the 2018 agreement, which is called Revitalize Agreement on the Resolution of Conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. This agreement establishes so many things that a government needs to do to establish peace in the country. First of all, the maintenance of rule of law is one of the key recommendations in the agreement to be done. The agreement itself establishes what the ministry called Ministry of Peace Building in the country, which clearly mobilize and sensitize people about how to maintain peace. The same agreement also established what we call hybrid court for those who are aggrieved to put their grievances, and then they can find a resolution to their grievances. It also established a truth and reconciliation process where people can come forward or asked to come forward to explain what their role, whether negative or positive, to, for instance, to resolve and bring conclusion to grievances of people. So this is what the country is doing at the moment to maintain peace. If we come back to the role of what can IGAD and EAC do to help us maintain or support us to maintain or to resolve issues of conflict and displacement is, of course, I'm under Secretary of the Ministry of Humanitarian and Disaster Management. We are concerned about the early warning systems. It's how we would be happy to be supported in that particular area, that EAC and IGAD need to be proactive in the area of early warning system. We also need looking forward to the continent is already having an idea of risk management or risk insurance in the form. There is also an agency called Africa Risk Capacity, which we would like to see that IGAD and EAC have a similar body that could insure or help to insure countries against the climatic and natural disasters when they do happen. What we realize that when these natural disasters happen, a country finds it very difficult to respond immediately for these disasters. It takes them about a month or so to be able to mobilize a response from the international community to be able to get necessary help to support the people. But if IGAD and EAC have a similar body that can ensure where countries can contribute and insure themselves against natural disasters, it would be a good idea for people to be able to get immediate help in the aftermath of disaster. I think this would be a very good contribution from our support from our regional bodies. I also concur with my colleague from Somalia who also stressed the issue of capacity building, because our ability, our country to respond to major disasters is not well capacitated. I think if we need in that area to be able to get support in terms of training, in terms of funding also, to be able to respond immediately to immediate need of the people. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you, South Sudan. Thank you for that. I think I would like to give the floor to Sudan to respond as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. In Sudan, we already adopted some mechanism to deal with displacement and natural disaster. Specifically, we have two commissions, which are Humanitarian Aid Commission and Refugees Commission. And they are cooperating with some regional and international partners in order to face the challenges that whenever it happens. Before the ongoing conflict in Sudan, the Humanitarian Aid Commission was registered over 3,000 different organizations, including 13 regional organizations, and they are playing the main role in facing the disasters, especially the climate change and other natural disasters. What the international community can do is supporting Sudan, as the current situation is very critical, that all the organizations which are already registered are not working right now because of it is not safe to work, especially in the capital. And this is why the citizens of Khartoum are in badly need to get humanitarian aid. And if we go back to 2 days ago to the summit of IGAD in Djibouti, they talked about having a ceasefire and a clear corridor to supply and to deliver the humanitarian aid to the victim people. So we deeply and we are calling the international organization to help Sudan, as the crisis is still ongoing, until we succeed in fixing on the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sudan. I'll give the last spot to Ethiopia. Please.
Thank you. I would rather substantiate what my brothers raised here regarding what regional organizations like the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, and the international community could do in ensuring peace and stability in the region. One thing IGAD and the international community should do with regards to ensuring peace and stability is building the capacity of the region so that countries could be able to handle and manage conflict in a better way than it becomes out of control. So capacity building is one of the components we want IGAD and other regional organizations and what have you, and of course the international community to work on. And the other point is conflict early warning. So if these actors work on conflict early warning, countries that could have conflicts may have the chance to take corrective and early measures, so that there will be a very broad chance of narrowing the crisis and handling it in a very peaceful manner. And advocacy for peace and development. As we earlier raised, poverty is one of the driving factors for people to get displaced. So particularly the international community should fund development initiatives so that people could live decent life, which on the other hand is a driving factor for them displaced in pursuit of decent life. So funding and development initiatives is one component we expect the international community to work on, so that this poverty thing, which is one driving factor that pushes people to displacement, could be averted by investing on development initiatives. And we want such bodies to be neutral mediators in situations of conflict, like be it IGAD or whoever should take or assume a neutral role in mediating the conflicting parties to come to the negotiating table and solve their differences in an amicable manner. And all said, there should be this understanding of bringing actors that could be the drivers of conflict in every situation, should be given access to voice their concerns, which could be of help to bring sustainable understanding and stability within the region. I mean, we don't need to neglect the voices of conflicting parties by undermining some or whatever. So listening to the voice of conflicting parties could be helpful in ensuring the kind of durable stability we aim to be in our region, in particular region where our focus is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ethiopia. I understand we're limited on time, but it would be remiss of me to cut this discussion very short. So I would like to rephrase the next question just to have a broader insight and probably get your key perspectives on this area, and also some key messages to actually have an outcome from this session. When you look at the EAC and IGAD member states, which you are representatives of, what do you think it would take to harmonize your standard operating procedures in terms of forced displacement, meaning cross-border movement? People that are victims from member states crossing over to your national borders, and also your citizens moving towards your member states' national borders. What do you think it would take to harmonize your SOPs? And do you think it's possible to harmonize those SOPs within the region to cater for these people on the move? Thank you. I think I'll give the floor to DRC to go first.
Merci pour la préoccupation. Merci pour la préoccupation. Je voulais d'abord dire merci parce que en ce moment où nous parlons, grâce à notre adhésion à l'EAC, nous avons aujourd'hui la présence des forces militaires de l'EAC pour nous soutenir dans la restauration de la paix dans la province du Nord Kivu. Quant à la libre circulation, moi je pense que si nous voulons rester réellement une organisation qui veut mettre toutes ces populations ensemble en termes de déplacement, de mouvement, il est très important qu'on pense à la libre circulation dans la sous-région. Je pense, hier, j'ai lu quelque chose sur les réseaux sociaux où les Congolais dénonçaient le fait de ne pas se déplacer librement dans l'espace EAC. Et pourtant, nous sommes membres de cette grande communauté. Donc ça, c'est un problème. Si les personnes vivant dans cet espace ne se déplacent pas, où il y a des barrières pour qu'ils se déplacent, là, sincèrement, nous ne travaillons pas pour la paix dans notre espace. Se déplacer aussi renforce la paix. Lorsque les gens se déplacent, se connaissent, ils vivent ensemble. Donc c'est important vraiment de penser à ça, parce que beaucoup de nos compatriotes sont victimes de ça, parce qu'ils ne savent pas se déplacer, même dans cet espace. Hier, à l'aéroport, même on a eu des contraintes avec mon collègue. Moi, j'avais un passeport de service. j'étais pas content de payer les visas. Je suis rentré librement. Mais mon collègue qui n'avait pas son passeport de service, qui avait un passeport ordinaire, on a eu des problèmes pour qu'on entre. On doit payer $50 pour le visa, on sort les billets. Non, les billets sombres, on ne prend pas. On est resté là pendant plus de 2 heures à l'aéroport à cause juste de ces libertés de mouvement. C'est important donc d'y penser. Merci.
Thank you, DRC. Merci beaucoup. I'll give the floor to South Sudan.
I would like to say that I would like to think that this is the most straightforward question. I think prior to COVID-19, I think it was in the East Africa between 2017 2018, I think we have discussed and reached to a zero draft document that was supposed to harmonize the practices, how we manage refugees in East Africa. I think the same process can again be subjected to both East Africa and IGAD. Because by 2018, we have looked at the best practices in every country in East Africa, and we have reached to a draft, which I should be asking at this junction where it is, but that was a draft to harmonize the standing operating procedure, how to manage refugee issues in the country, in East Africa. I think the same methodology could still be adopted in IGAD region to look at various good practices and see where we can harmonize our laws such that we don't witness these issues of onward movement and issues of displacement. We can look at it. We also have a Kampala declaration on the IDP issues. Again, this is a good platform for us to look at how we manage issues of forced displacement and issues of refugees. I think we have an opportunity there to do a lot in terms of harmonization, in terms of establishing standard operating procedure for us. Thank you.
Thank you, South Sudan. Yes, I'm going to give the floor to Ethiopia.
Thank you. So, these regional organizations have the burden of working for the common good, which is really bringing peace, development, and stability within and beyond. So the commitment is, is living up to the expectation of the very population in the region to enjoy peaceful life, which is coupled with development and a durable solution. So this should be the very assignment taken back home by these regional organizations, which of course should also be supported by the international community, particularly with development partners should play their part in ensuring this dream come true. So leaders in the region should revitalize solidarity for peaceful IGAD-EAC region, peaceful Africa, and why not peaceful world too. So revitalizing solidarity between leaders at the high level is one important factor to bring what we aspire in the region to be true. Thank you.
Rene, I'd like to kindly ask that we wrap up the session within the next 5. Is that possible?
We'll do our best on that.
Okay, kindly do. We are stressed for time. Thank you.
I will try to very quickly. As we are sharing the same region, I think as our member state, we should have a political will to address our challenges regarding to the displacement. We should reactivate the agreements and the mechanism existing, and we should deal in seriously with our challenge as a region. Because whatever is going to affect in one of our states is going to affect the others. So we should take carefully on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Somalia briefly before we open the session to the audience. Thank you.
When you talk about harmonizing policies and practices among the IGAD member states and East African community counterparts, the goodness is that, you know, our countries, we have almost similar situations. Almost things are very similar. Now, the way of dealing with IDBs, refugees, it's in fact similar with the way Kenya deals. How it is dealt here in Uganda, it's also similar with the ways it's dealt in Kenya. In fact, when with us being a premature country, we are just a country transitioning from fragility, and everything was just made from scratch. And every protocol and every policy that we have been developing, of course, we looked at how it can be harmonized with the IGAD policies on that issue, African Union policies on that issue, and also the similarities we share with our neighboring countries. Somalia, I know IDBs, cross-border IDBs is a major problem. Like Kenya, now a Somali to go to Kenya, he has to apply for an online visa. It sometimes is rejected, it sometimes is approved. It takes also long. It goes through a long process. Just as my colleague from DRC mentioned, it is similar when somebody is coming here to Uganda. And those countries we share the border with, like Djibouti, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Although Ethiopia, Somalis are given a visa on arrival, but it's a problem. IGAD, I know IGAD has been trying its best, and it has developed what they call a free movement protocol, in which we were the fourth country that signed. We signed it earlier this year, and I hope also there's a transhumance protocol. Although with us we could not, for certain reasons, we did not co-sign it. We did not sign it for certain reasons. And the cross-border IDBs. Yesterday I had Madam Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, the Minister of East African Affairs and the Deputy Prime Minister of Uganda. She mentioned about seasonal refugees. Seasonal refugees, in Somalia it happens, the pastoralists, they cross the border to Ethiopia, and after the rain comes, they go back to Somalia. It also happens this border with Kenya. I think it is where we need to elaborate and have policies on, because now what I know is that there are no many mechanisms to deal with such seasonal refugees, and cross-border IDBs. Documentation for cross-border IDBs is also very rare, it's very limited. So those are the areas we need also to improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Somalia, for elaborating on that. I'll open the floor to the audience, at least a couple of interventions. Please raise your hand and the mic will find you. Is there any submission from the audience? I think we have somebody at the back. Please avail them a mic.
Thank you. My name is Geoffrey Kabi from Federation of Uganda Employers. I want to take this opportunity to thank the panelists. What they have shared is really insightful. Now, as a representative of employers, I'm looking at one aspect that I've not heard them talk about. That is equating the qualifications. Because when we migrate, or either as migrants or refugees from one country to another, we are expected to participate into the economic development of the countries of destination. But there is that element of recognition of qualifications because we are studying under these different curriculums. So I would like to seek guidance on how the different countries, the member states, intend to address this. Thank you.
That question is noted. I'll move to the other question. I believe it's, yes, thank you, please.
Yes. Je voulais demander, je suis de la RDC, et je voulais demander, j'ai entendu l'intervention de papa là qui vient de la RDC, et il a parlé de facteurs extérieurs qui sont cause de la déstabilisation au Congo. Et je me suis aussi demandé, et une question que je voulais vous demander tout de suite, quels sont les systèmes ou les mécanismes immunitaires du Congo intérieur pour lutter contre les facteurs extérieurs qui causent les conflits au Congo? Merci.
Thank you for your question. If you're able to jot that question down somewhere because the translation wasn't clear, I think it would be helpful for us to take note of it. Thank you. Please, at the front. Could somebody get a mic, please, at the front? Thanks.
Thank you. My question is, could we explore mechanisms for cross-border, durable, sustainable, voluntary returns so that we don't have the pendular movement, so that when refugees return, they are accorded the same kind of support that they've been having, if it's education or health or whatever services, so that we don't have the cross-border movements, the returns and all that, the pendular movements. What can countries that are generating refugees into other countries do to ensure that when there is voluntary return, it's sustained?
Thank you. I'll take another from the colleague on the back end, please.
Yeah, thank you. From the submissions since yesterday, and also the panelists, I've noted that there are countries that are hosting refugees and also have refugees in other countries. This sounds so unique. What must we do as IGAD and East African countries to ensure that this is addressed? Because you cannot be a host country of refugees and you also have refugees in other countries. Secondly, there's been a mention across all the countries who are in the panelists regarding climatic shocks as one of the serious causes of forced displacement. I know this is not only in the countries that have refugees, possibly in Uganda and other countries of Africa, but these issues regarding climatic change are across all the countries of Africa and also in the world. What do you think you've not done as countries that have refugees, moving to other countries because of climatic shocks regarding mitigations to address climatic changes. What do you think you've not done as those countries, citing climatic shocks as one of the causes of forced displacement? Thank you very much.
Thanks for your question. I think let's hold them for now and respond to those so we don't lose track of all the questions. Let me give audience to Somalia to respond first. We can begin. Hello? Testing? I think our mics are off. Hello? Testing? The mics are off. Okay. Okay, I think we're back. To start with the first question, I believe it's in relation to the qualifications and employment. How does that translate in terms of movement to various member states? I'll give the first floor to Somalia to respond to the first question. In terms of the qualifications and employment opportunities, how does that work in terms of their cross-border movement? Thank you.
In terms of qualification, I think the question that person asked was about the refugees who are becoming refugees in this country, and when they don't get what they wanted, they go to like Kenya and they get registered again as refugees.
Allow me to jump in. His reference was we have different curriculums in different member states. For someone to be employed in a different member state coming in as a refugee, will their qualifications be recognized? And if they're not recognized, how do we address some of those gaps, if I'm correct? Thank you.
I think with us, we had a problem, in fact, with the qualifications because there was no uniform curriculum in the country previously. And most of the higher education providers, the universities, also had no uniform curriculum in Somalia. But now we are trying our best to have one uniform curriculum in the whole country, so that the certificates provided, the secondary education certificates provided to the qualifiers is an authentic certificate from the Ministry of Education. I know there's one thing missing in East Africa or in IGAD. We do not have a database where we do not have a uniform database for qualifications. I know, but at least that challenge can be capped by having the educational document is authenticated at the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Education, in each and every country. Now, there are many Kenyans who are working in our country as a humanitarian staff, working for schools also, working in universities also. Their certificate, to ensure their certificate or to identify their certificates, we just look at the authentications from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and from the respective Ministry of Education. I know there's no uniform database, I know, but at least there are many ways that the challenge can be capped. And this other point, talking about the refugee getting registered here in Uganda as a refugee and going to another country, I think the UNHCR guys, they are here with us. They have a database. When they register somebody biometrically, I think that person will be unable to register himself or herself in Kenya through UNHCR database because the fingerprints will be defaulted, I think. Our friend from UNHCR can enlighten us about that.
Thank you, Somalia. Would you like UNHCR to respond to that effect?
Yeah, he's there, our friend from UNHCR.
I will give the audience to him to respond. Please, Sine, I think I'll give you the lead on this one. On behalf of UNHCR.
If I reframe my question is that I know UNHCR has a database for biometrically registering the refugees.
whereby fingerprints are taken, pictures are taken. If a refugee is registered in Uganda, that refugee will be unable to register him or herself in Kenya because the fingerprints will be defaulted. You know, if the refugee even tells another name, it will be difficult, I think.
Yeah.
So you can enlighten us about that. The refugees movements from Kenya to Uganda are going, getting refugee status in Somalia, somewhere else. That one you can enlighten about that.
Yeah.
About it.
No, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. Indeed, I think that there are biometric features that are in place in terms of registration of refugees. This is not only in the region, it's a global effort. So the attempt is to ensure that refugees are duly registered, have access to basic services, but it is also to avoid a situation of irregular movement, because clearly that is problematic. But if I may, given that I am also given the floor, I wanted to actually raise two questions from the UNHCR perspective. This panel is meant to look at prevention and mitigation of conflict and climate-induced displacement. And we both know that IGAD and the East African community have conflict prevention mechanisms. My question to the panelists would be, how can we ensure a more rapid response and an effective early warning response for displacement crises in the region? As you know, we have multiple crises unfolding, and it seems to me that often the response is slow. We often intervene after the events have occurred, but can we find a way to jointly with IGAD and the East African community prevent and address the root causes? That is one question. And the other, in line with Madame Hélène from the CRF Secretariat of Uganda, is the cross-border element. And I think the cross-border element is critical in light of what was said in the panel about reconciliation and mediation efforts. Often refugees are not included in such efforts. I think that it becomes quite cumbersome when we have to project ongoing national reconciliation efforts, which may include constitution drafting and may include also restitution issues. So is there a way that IGAD and EAC can facilitate when, for instance, the national, transitional justice mechanisms in the countries concerned need to travel to refugee camps and sensitize refugees? We know that South Sudan, for instance, is in its transitional phase, as was highlighted. Constitution making is underway. Ethiopia mentioned also the Transitional Justice Initiative. How can we make these processes accessible to refugees so that they can partake in them and ensure that they can shape the processes? We have over 2 million South Sudanese refugees. We have also Congolese refugees and others in the region who wish to partake in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's UNHCR. Just to allow the other member states to reflect on the first question, I'll just try to let us know that we are limited with time, so let's be as precise as possible and address the questions that are presented to us. But also to respect the earlier questions, I think let's address them before we address the last question that actually came forward. Just to reiterate the question that came before, I think we can address them at the same time in the interest of time. One of the questions that came up was, in terms of qualifications, how do we sort out this problem for refugees that have resettled in a different country and their qualifications to actually help them gain employment from the hosting countries? The second question was, what are member states doing to help refugees return back home? I believe that was the question from the forefront. The third question was, Yes, an addendum to that. For refugees also to remain back home as opposed to becoming refugees. What are member states actually doing to ensure that they do not become refugees in the first place? Thirdly, looking at climatic shocks as one of the serious causes for the refugee crisis, how do we address some of these issues? Then lastly, to the point from UNHCR, how can we ensure a more rapid response to crisis in the region, specifically the IGAD and EAC member states as we are here today? And at this juncture, I'd like to step away from the podium and allow my co-moderator to conclude this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rene. What we'll do is probably we'll start with Somalia, and then come this way, as requested, be as brief as possible, because you are standing between yourselves and the participants and lunch, and unless the MC is going to tell us that we still need to have another session and then skip lunch. But anyway, that is to come later on. Please go ahead.
I will be very brief. With the qualification, I think with us, that question about the qualification, we are also having the same challenge with other countries. And you know, we are still formulating a way we can deal with that. But now it has not yet been discussed, and there's no on the table formulated policy towards it now. The answer of sustaining those who have returned involuntarily to the country to make sure that they don't again return back and become refugees in the countries they were repatriated from, or in the countries they were returned from. Now we are trying our best. At least we provide some sort of education for their children. Also, we categorized them as one of the marginalized groups, so that they can be given a favor under the support of humanitarian food security programs and cash voucher. The other thing also, we try to give them land where they settle. What was the other question? The climate change adaptation and coping mechanisms. I know coping mechanisms of climate change is a major challenge in our country. Now, the floods, with the floods in Beledweyne. Beledweyne is a city that experienced many floods. And among those floods, most of the people in Beledweyne, all of them, they have been affected. And there were many displaced people as a result of the floods of that Shabelle River. Now, what we are trying is that we are trying to build to make journalists, water diversion journalists, so that the water, so that overflooding of the river is decreased. Also, there's a water catchment. Now the government is excavating to have the extra, the overload water to be diverted to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any responses from Sudan?
According to our practice, when we deal with refugees and displacement, when we register...
Could you speak louder or get closer to the mic? Thank you.
When we register a refugee in our national registration, we grant him all the rights he deserved by regional and international law. For example, we grant him the right to enroll himself or his children to education system and having a car to get the health services, as well as if he wants to if he wants or her to grant a land for agriculture or something like that, also it is possible. I think our brother in South Sudan are joining that, and they can talk to you about that more than me, even because they are enjoying that already. This is a right. We give it to all the refugees inside the Sudan. Even in our civil law, if a refugee got married to any Sudanese woman, after 5 minutes we grant him a citizenship if he wants to get it. And after that he will become, or he will enjoy all the rights granted to the citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethiopia?
Thank you. In regards to employment, we have this modality of engaging refugees in livelihood activities by venturing with their horses. Like in our case, I can cite one best example. In our Malkadida branch office, we have...
Sorry, could you speak closer to the mic?
Okay.
So we hear you. Thank you.
So Somali refugees residing in Malkadida branch office have been engaged in a vast irrigated agriculture by venturing with their horses along the Ganale River. So they are into livelihood activities to be self-sufficient. So that's our experience. And this question from CRRF Uganda and HCR Regional Bureau, sure, to bring durable solution, particularly with regards to this national reconciliation, it's of vital importance to engage refugees in the very process itself. So this is one good tip each and every one of us could take as a home-taken assignment, so that we need to, as a host and a transit or whatever the case might be, we need to engage. We need to bring refugees on board with regards to negotiations, because they could have their part in making that reconciliation last long. And finally, I would like to comment on funding with regards to climate shocks. Sure, one of the very root causes for displacement is climate catastrophe. So funding climate initiatives and coastal climate actions is one important point. Particularly, we demand from the international community and funders, as hosting refugees is bringing another burden by depleting the environment on the already depleted one. So be it afforestation or reforestation or planting trees of what sort, supporting this initiative is very important, and we want actors in this regard to mobilize funds to regain the very natural setting of the environment that's being depleted by hosting a huge number of refugees. So that's one thing we need to bear in mind with regards to the factors that are driving people to get displaced. Thank you.
Thank you so much. South Sudan?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. With reference to question number 1, is about qualification and employment opportunity for the refugees in the country of asylum. In my country, first of all, refugees are granted the full right for employment. They can be employed and they can establish their own businesses. But when it comes to qualification, there are 3 institutions involved that evaluate and grade the qualification of coming from abroad. For general education, Minister of General Education would know what level of certificate, for instance, if you finish here general education certificate, you have a general education certificate, they will look at it, they will know how to grade you. And then that you can access. If you want to go to university, still you can access. And this goes the same for our South Sudanese people who have been out, who came back to the country with a foreign certificate. They are graded and they are evaluated and they are accorded the equivalent, they would be able to know this certificate equivalent to what level. The same thing to the tertiary level, which is the university. The Ministry of Higher Education also grade level of certificate and equate them to what level. This is done in consultation with the Ministry of Labor so that the certificate is acceptable wherever you want to get employment. With reference to question number 2, 3, and 4, which is about what can we do to help refugees come back, or what services are available for returnees, or why do you produce refugees in your country and also you have refugees coming to your country. Of course, all these issues are to do with what are the main causes, first of all, that drive your citizens away from your country. If you want them to come back, then you're going to have to create an enabling condition that will attract them to come back to your country. And we have done that in South Sudan, and also with the Sudan, with the help of IGAD. We're trying to create a conducive atmosphere that will allow people to come back. It means if it was a political issue, it must be addressed. And again, when people go outside and they are in refugee camps, sometimes they get better facilities, better education facilities, etc., etc. So in order to attract them back, we also have to invest in creating a situation where we have better services at the areas of return. For instance, you must have good health facilities, education facilities, security, as well as what you need to make them comfortable. These conditions, if they are addressed, our people will come back to the country of origin. With reference to constitutional making, or when countries in transition like South Sudan, that if we have a large number of people outside the country, and we are currently engaged in a process where we want to have a new constitution. In the past, between 2017 and 2018, we invested in what we call national dialogue. National dialogue was a process where we talk to each other, all the citizens in the country, including people from outside. And in this context, our current foreign minister was the head of the committee to engage with the refugees in diaspora. We solicit the help of UNHCR in this context because sometimes it's difficult to contact your citizens who are refugees in another country because they are running away from you. So in that process, UNHCR facilitated a delegation from us which visited Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Sudan to talk to our refugees, to tell them the conditions are right at the moment. You are welcome, and we want to listen to your views. What are your fears? Similar process, I think we can still do it as we are embarking on constitutional making process. We will again be trying to revisit and see how we can engage our citizens who are refugees in the neighboring countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, South Sudan. And now, we'll also ask the DRC to intervene as the last panelist, please. Allez-y.
Oui, merci. Par rapport à la première préoccupation sur l'éducation, je pense, je l'ai souligné dans mon propos, quand on m'avait accordé la parole. La RDC a mis un accent très particulier sur l'éducation des réfugiés. Et d'ailleurs, je vous ai dit que l'éducation en RDC primaire est déjà gratuite. L'éducation primaire est gratuite pour tous les enfants congolais et réfugiés. Et l'accès aussi à l'école, à l'université, c'est dans les mêmes conditions avec le Congo. De ceux qui obtiennent leur diplôme dans nos universités, sans problème, ceux qui ont de la chance, ils ont de l'emploi. Ils ont de l'emploi. J'en connais autant, je ne peux pas les citer ici. Nous avons des médecins réfugiés burundais qui sont chez nous. Nous avons travaillé activement par rapport à l'obtention des numéros de registre de médecins. Ils sont médecins dans nos hôpitaux. Je connais. Nous avons aussi un très bon ingénieur un très bon ingénieur qui installe des antennes de communication par-ci par-là, mais c'est un réfugié ougandais. Donc chez nous, l'éducation au centre des réfugiés, ensuite l'emploi, il n'y a pas de problème par rapport à l'accès des réfugiés à l'emploi. Ça, il n'y a pas de problème. Et d'ailleurs, les réfugiés, aujourd'hui, nous travaillons avec certains ministères et organisations par rapport à l'inclusion des réfugiés dans les fichiers nationaux. Donc là, il n'y a pas de souci. Par rapport à la question de mon compatriote sur les facteurs externes ou exogènes que j'avais cités tout à l'heure par rapport au conflit dans mon pays, je voulais être profond. Je ne voulais pas rester superficiel. Ça, je ne voulais pas. Parce que oui, nous avons des problèmes à l'interne. Je ne dis pas que nous n'avons pas de problèmes à l'interne. Nous avons des problèmes. Cohabitation pacifique avec communauté, par exemple. Nous avons connu ça à l'Équateur en 2010. Il y a eu conflit entre Enyele et Monza. Il y a des communautés qui sont affrontées. Mais le gouvernement a travaillé, il a imposé la paix. Ils sont rentrés, ils sont allés à Brazzaville et on les a retournés. Plus de 112 000 avec le concours d'IHR. Plus de 112 000, ils sont rentrés dans le Kasaï occidental, Kasaï central, Kasaï. Nous avons eu des problèmes intercommunautaires. Les gens sont partis en Angola. Mais aujourd'hui, nous travaillons avec l'Angola pour le retour de toutes ces personnes. Parce que nous avons sécurisé les zones de retour. Donc moi je pense, quand je parle de facteurs externes, je l'ai bien souligné, vous allez vous rendre compte que ces conflits sont plus, ces conflits armés sont plus dans les zones minières. Ça c'est externe. Il y a des forces centrifuges qui travaillent pour que nous maintiennent dans cet état de choses. Donc je ne dédouane pas mon gouvernement de sa responsabilité d'imposer la paix sur notre territoire, mais il y a des forces qui travaillent là-dessus. Bon. Par rapport... Comment mettre fin à ces mécanismes pour mettre en fin ces conflits? Moi, je pense qu'il y a eu des mécanismes, mais tout à l'heure, j'ai parlé de conflit Enyele. Ça, c'était un grand conflit qui avait poussé plus de 120 000 Congolais de quitter la province de l'Équateur vers le Congo-Brazzaville. Plus de 120 000. Et nous avons rapatrié à l'époque avec le concours du IHR 112 000. 112 000 sont rentrés dans la province de l'Équateur. Donc le gouvernement travaille par rapport à la cohabitation pacifique entre communautés, par exemple en conflit. Là, il y a un grand travail qui se fait par le gouvernement et restaurer la paix. C'est la paix. C'est la paix. Paix aider les retours des réfugiés. Et lorsqu'il n'y a pas de paix dans une zone, moi je vois très mal qu'on parle du retour des réfugiés, parce que le retour doit être durable. Le retour doit être durable. Quand on rapatrie quelqu'un dans son pays, il doit y demeurer. Il ne faut pas qu'on les rapatrie aujourd'hui. Là, j'abonde la troisième question. On rapatrie aujourd'hui, demain, il rentre dans le pays d'Asie. Donc le gouvernement doit travailler d'abord pour restaurer la paix, créer un climat de confiance, restaurer la paix, la sécurité. C'est un élément d'incitation au retour. Aujourd'hui, nous avons des réfugiés qui sont en Namibie. Ils ont demandé, et même ils ont demandé, ils rentrent dans notre pays. Ils sont du Kasaï, de Kinshasa, mais on a été là-bas en Namibie, on les a arrêtés, ils vont rentrer. Donc c'est la paix peut garantir le retour des réfugiés. Mais pour notre cas, dans certaines zones de notre pays, aujourd'hui par exemple, il est vraiment difficile de penser par exemple à un retour durable. Là je peux prendre le cas des zones comme Rutshuru, comme Masisi, confrontés par des conflits armés présentement. Donc ça c'est important. Donc le gouvernement doit créer des conditions de paix. C'est un élément incitatif au retour des réfugiés. Voilà. Le dernier point, c'était quoi sur les chocs? C'est les chocs climatiques. Les chocs, vraiment, nous les sentons. Nous comme Congolais, nous avons eu ces problèmes avec le volcan Nyiragongo, tout à l'heure avec les inondations dans les Kalele. Mais par rapport à ça, moi je pense que c'est important qu'on y tienne compte. Parce que moi, je connais dans certaines zones où nous avons reçu un nombre très important de réfugiés. Il y a eu par exemple des cas de déboisement, la destruction de l'environnement. Si vous allez à l'Équateur c'est une forêt. Mais si vous allez à Boyabo, au camp de Boyabo, au camp de Molé, vous allez vous rendre compte qu'il n'y a plus d'arbres. Il n'y a plus d'arbres parce que les réfugiés s'en servent pour la cuisson, tout, pour la fabrication de braises, la vente, tout. Ça nous crée des non-problèmes. Donc là, il faut des programmes de déforestation pour essayer un peu de réanimer l'environnement. Mais pour Goma aussi, par rapport au volcan, je pense là, il y a eu vraiment un net renforcement de capacité de notre service qui suit régulièrement les mouvements du volcan de Nirago.
Okay, I'd kindly like to ask that we close this session in the next 5 minutes. We'd like to move to the final session before lunch. We would have had lunch now, however, the elements outside are not in our favor. So we'd like to kindly ask that we extend for 30 minutes. We'll have the next session for 30 minutes after this. Then after that, we'll proceed for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony, and I would like to extend the co-moderators' gratitude to the insightful interventions of our 5 panelists from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Republic of South Sudan, Republic of Sudan, and the Federal Republic of Somalia. And thank you very much as well to those who intervened from the floor as you asked those important questions that helped us to better understand the issues relating to forced displacement, conflict, and durable solutions. And once again, thank you, and you may wish to applaud the panelists, not forgetting, obviously, the co-moderator. Thank you.
After lunch, I'm going to be militaristic. The moment we start? Including when we come back? Yes. Okay. Democracy ends here.
Because there's no carryover.
Yes.
No carryover.
Who's the person in the EAC? All right, ladies and gentlemen, just a change in the program because of the weather. We're going to kindly ask that we ferry you to the lunch place with umbrellas. If we are to wait for the weather to subside, we'll probably wait till 3 or 4 o'clock. So we're going to have lunch. However, right after lunch now, we're going to defer the session which was supposed to happen right now till after lunch. But when we come back, we're going to ask all the presenters to be very, I think the word is extremely strict, almost prison standards. When you're given 5 minutes, it will be militaristically enforced by your commander-in-chief, aka yours truly. So we will have 5 minutes for every single one of the presenters because we have 2 very intense sessions. So, mesdames et messieurs, on va changer le programme. On va manger le déjeuner maintenant, mais on retourne ici dans 1 heure, mais ça va être très strict. Chaque personne qui parle va parler pour 5 minutes seulement. All right, so thank you very much. We will see you after lunch. Let's kindly make our way to the lunch area, finish as fast as possible, and make our way back here. We will give you umbrellas and you'll have escorts to and from the tents. Thank you and bon appétit.